Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show. As he says, I'm David Duarte, your host for today's episode of Culture Before Content. We're excited to have you here with us on the Music for All podcast network. And I'd like to also take a moment to thank Yamaha, who is our national presenting sponsor, for their incredible and ongoing support in making this podcast possible for everyone tuning in. At Music for All and within our entire Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music. We hope this podcast offers inspiration, ideas, and support to everyone committed to making a lasting impact on their students' lives using the power of music. Our guests take their time and share their amazing expertise, and I think that is so amazing. So first, thanks for being here. If you're watching us live, you're either on Facebook or YouTube, don't forget to share, don't forget to comment. We'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. Go ahead, ask your questions, share a thought, say hello, and interact with us in real time. If you miss any part of the broadcast, don't worry, you can watch the full rebroadcast right after. Also, we have the audio versions that are typically available on Mondays through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many other podcast platforms. For more details, just head to musicforall.org/podcast. That's musicforall.org/podcast. And you can find the content of your choosing and a couple other great podcasts. Well, in the last episode, we had Mr. Blake Allen, who was a fine arts coordinator in Beaverton, Oregon. He shared his insights on building a very strong K-12 arts program, and I can tell you that firsthand. It's great. He discussed coordinating arts initiatives, securing instrument funding, and creating support systems for music teachers. Blake highlighted the importance of assessment through pre and post performance evaluations and fostering positive relationships with administrators and the community as well. He emphasized proactive advocacy, engaging students and parents, and making music programs visible to sustain arts education and student engagement across the district. And now, finally, this week, I am so excited. We have a great guest. I'm going to sit down with the dynamic Christina Soper. She is an inspiring band director, an exceptional flautist, and an incredible leader. Christina is the director of bands at both Hale Elementary School and Stapley Junior High in Mesa, Arizona, which we'll talk about. This is a big district. She fosters a vibrant, high-energy band culture that sparks student passion and excellence. Her leadership spans Arizona as she serves, observes, and uplifts the music education community as a whole. She sets high standards for students and educators alike. Christina's dedication makes her a true force. So without any further ado, please welcome to the show, Mrs. Christina Soper.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, please. I'm super excited that you're here. And like I was saying, Mesa, you teach in Mesa School District. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a little about your schools, and a little about your district.
Yeah, sure. So this is my 18th year of teaching. Graduated from Arizona State in 2007. Did my student teaching and internships between Mesa Schools and Gilbert Schools, our neighboring district. And then my first job was teaching at Longfellow Elementary, one of our Title I schools, doing K-6 general music, 5-6 band. And I was really loving that job. It was such a special community. And that was 2009 was the end of my second year there. And that, we were dealing with the market crash and whatnot. And they were saying, we're having to shift teachers around. We know you want junior high. We have this junior high position. And I was like, but I'm finally getting comfortable at the end of my second year. And initially I actually told them no. I said, I didn't want to move yet. I appreciate it. And they were like, well, you don't have much choice here. You're going. So off I went to my current position. Very different from the school I was at previously. So I've been here at Hale and Stapley, some of our only non-title schools in the district. And then when I stepped into this position, we still had ninth graders at the junior high, taught ninth graders for 2 years, and then they moved them to the high school. And at that point, I took on a third school, Lehigh, another Title I school, kind of just part of our feeder area, partially feeds to Stapley, mostly goes to Keno and the Westwood District, or I'm sorry, Westwood High School area. Did that for 5 years and then built the program to have enough kids to have 3 classes back again. And so it's been Hale and Stapley only since about 2016 now, I believe it is.
Wow. It's funny because in my brain, I've known you for a long time and my brain is still fresh and new. But, I think about it. I've been gone for like 6 years from over there. So now it's like the time keeps marching on. And of course, all I see from you is success, success, success. And I follow along with the programs in Arizona quite a bit. So let's talk about it a little bit. So you do some educational leadership, so to speak. You serve for Arizona. What are the positions that you serve currently?
Yeah, so I have been one of the all-state band coordinators for junior high these past couple of years. What has it been? 5 years, 6 years now that I've been doing this. So I started off coming onto the team as the 6th grade coordinator, and then as other people left and moved on to other things, then I stepped in the 8th grade position, which is the 8th grade position kind of oversees everything. So it's definitely a big undertaking putting on the festival. One of my big things when I came on is our festival a long time ago used to be a nominated only festival. And partway through when I came in is when we had started moving into actually right when I came in is when we had started pushing into the audition zone. So the first auditions band was a 7th grade band. I'm sorry, we had a 8th grade band, then we moved to 7th grade. I conducted the first ever 7th grade auditioned band. And then the next year is when I came in as being a coordinator. And since then, we've been really working on boosting the awareness of the festival. Just folks are, but with it being a nominated thing, the participation was kind of hit or miss. Not a lot of people knew about the experience. So we worked kind of a big marketing campaign, so to speak, just, mainly through social media, doing some emails through the state organization mailing list and making sure people actually knew about the festival. People could be part of the organization and mainly because they were coming to state conference, but they didn't know anything about the festival that it existed. I certainly didn't for the longest time. And then, we just started pushing to making that happen. And we just had our late registration period is nearly wrapped up. We are having another record-breaking year. We have 902 registered auditions for our two 7th and 8th grade bands, which take about 130 each. So yeah, it's become a real big thing in Arizona, which is fantastic to see.
Well, I can tell you, as I don't know if you know this, but I conducted 2 of the nomination bands. I conducted the 7th grade all-state band once, and then I conducted the 8th grade all-state band once when they were nomination. And I learned a lot by doing that because nomination bands are quite different. And then I conducted the 8th grade band that was audition only, and wow, it was the difference between the two was just amazing. And that was, back when I think it had just started. It was either the second year, maybe. I don't know. I just remember having such a good time with the experience. And so, as we talk today, I think we can kind of take this show into 3 parts of culture. We can take it from the student route because, dear audience, this band director that before you is amazing. Her bands are super good. And we've been talking band for years. We can talk about the all-state route because I think that's one of those things that we don't always talk about. The culture of preparing for auditions, the culture of preparing for all-state, and especially in your field, which is middle school, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. I guess the 6th graders don't do the 6th grade. They don't audition, right? It's just 7th and 8th.
No,
grade.
It's just the directors have really wanted to keep the 6th grade as a nomination basis. So just the 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah. So maybe we'll talk about we can talk about the 7th and 8th grade culture of what it takes, because I think something that I've learned and something I can share from my experience, because I think I've adjudicated the saxophones every year since it started, is the difference in quality and just getting those kids prepared, and maybe some advice we can give to people out there. And then lastly, just serving with the adults. Anybody who's ever been a service leader in your music educators, you learn a lot by becoming that leader. You learn how to deal with adults differently, your band directors, your friends, and all that thing. So we can kind of take those 3 routes. So let's talk about the all-state band first a little bit. So you've there's 2 parts of this. I guess there's the student preparation and the adult preparation. Where should we go first?
Let's talk about the student preparation.
All right.
So I think one of the things that's really helped boost our numbers in it was making sure that we had recordings prepared for the students to reference. And so in a lot of those cases, and I know you were one of them, the etudes were recorded by the people that are judging for us. Sometimes it was recorded by another professional in the community. But, just like, auditioning for anything or practicing for anything, you need to have that reference recording, especially the younger the musician, man, the more important it is, like, help them get rid of that chainsaw saxophone sound and that
Oh,
model of
yes.
tone.
And I say this, and I've rifled some feathers here in Pacific Northwest, but I don't believe you can learn music without reference recordings. The big thing for me, especially as someone who is more of a, I play a lot of Broadway shows, I play a lot of jazz, and is you can't hear the style. And so what happened? I think I made the etudes, by the way. Bill Humbert wrote the etudes. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know, Bill Hubbard, director of bands at Glendale Community College. Also, if you ever have a chance, go listen to his community college band. Just fantastic concept of sound, and just a fantastic educator. But he took the time, because I remember the etudes at first. I don't remember what they were at first, but all of a sudden we had unified groups of etudes, and they were great for the kids. And there was lots of direction, like here's some, it's kind of like a skills transparency. So here's a crescendo, maybe we should do that. Here's a diminuendo, maybe we should do that. Here's a staccato. It was neat, because all of a sudden every etude on every instrument had everything very clear. So when you talked about the reference recordings, what I noticed is, as soon as we went from not having reference recordings to having reference recordings, things became important to the kids. Especially like, those large dynamic changes, all the contrast and all of those things. But I'm excited that drive to make those reference recordings were there, but the quality. Now let's talk about, some of the things that you've noticed with the students in preparation for Allstate.
We've had a very high increase in the amount of students who have actually submitted their audition, especially since getting those reference recordings going. So anybody that's out there that's, preparing a festival themselves, whether it's your district honor band, whether it's, something at the state level, having those reference recordings is key. We had, I believe the number before was something like 65% submission rate prior to this. And then the past couple years, our submission rate has gone up to, I think it was like 85%, which is just a huge jump. And it was like instantaneous, from one year to the next. So that's been really great to see.
Yeah. And it's really neat. I write the etudes for, I don't know if people know this, but Tennessee is like actually 3 little states mixed into one. So I wrote the etudes for Middle Tennessee. I didn't give them reference recordings, but what happens is the teachers at like Tennessee Tech, Austin P, you can go on YouTube and you have people providing reference recordings. And what I noticed on some of the middle school etudes is there was a band director there. He just got on every single instrument on his level and provided recordings for his kids. And I thought that was fantastic, because he actually was a darn good flute player. I think he was a trumpet player. He was playing flute, sax, all those things, but he was making those recordings and getting that access to the kids. I just think it's super amazing and super important for those kids to have. But I want to talk about this you talk about 85% submission rate. How about school participation? Has the number of schools participated going up?
Yeah, it's definitely gone up a bit. I would say the last couple years since, I came on and we started advertising, it's pretty much held solid. This year we have a few more schools participating. I think part of that is we have a really exciting opportunity this year. Usually our all-state bands are conducted by people within the state. And this year for 8th grade, it was a partnership with Phi Beta Mu, which I'm a part of. And we're super lucky to have George Hattendorf in the state of Arizona, and William Owens is one of his former students. And George wanted to commission a piece for junior high all-state this year and have Phi Beta Mu sponsor it. So we, as an organization, put that together. And William is not only going to be writing a commission for the 8th grade, but he is coming out to conduct it, which definitely helped to boost things. So, providing those extra special opportunities for students that they would not normally get. I mean, definitely not in their classroom, let alone in a, their city or district honor band, something like that is pretty cool. Yeah. We're excited to have them out.
Well, I think that's amazing. I think the last 2 years I've started my concerts every year with the William Owens piece. He writes fantastic literature for bands. I didn't even know that he was a George Hattendorf student. I mean, I sent him an email thanking him for the music, and and he responded right back. It was fantastically great.
Yeah, he's been great to work with. So if anybody's looking for a clinician, he's definitely been super fast to get back to us. Yeah, that was from
My
George's Illinois days.
Yeah, George has been everywhere. So let's talk about the teacher side of this thing. So like I think we talk about the culture of audition. Well, let's finishing up with the students, getting your kids as prepared as possible before they submit is everything. I feel bad because like I said, I've listened to probably a few thousand auditions in my career with you guys, and I feel bad for half the time. 50% of those auditions would be better if the band director would have just listened one time. They could have fixed so many things, even just like how to start, how to stop, tempo, some of those things. But let's talk about the band director side. What does a band director do to need to be prepared to submit for Allstate? What's the process like in Arizona?
So the big thing is, and I would say this is probably going to be for anywhere, is people need to be aware of their handbook and making sure that they're, I used to, back when I was first starting and getting involved in these things, I would just physically print it off and I'd go through with the highlighter to make sure I was getting all the correct information. Make sure you have those dates in your calendar. While as chairs, we will send out courtesy reminders. That is definitely not a expected part that we have to do that for everybody. So, directors really need to be on top of making sure that they are aware of the deadlines and policies so that their students can take advantage of all these amazing opportunities. And then, it's like with planning anything, you've got your end goal and your end dates, but you need to know all those benchmarks along the way. So for my students, I'm allowing them right now during our warm-up sessions, they're going out and practicing and playing for each other a bit. And then they've got to schedule a sit down with me here in the next couple weeks before we do their final recording, just to make sure they're truly on the right track. The earlier, the better, obviously. It's always unfortunate when you see a student who's suddenly learned the wrong etudes because they downloaded the wrong instrument, or, I've seen recordings come in where somehow the student got the wrong year. So I don't know if the director handed to him or maybe a private lesson teacher. And that's always unfortunate, especially when they performed well, because the wrong material is the wrong material.
Yeah. So some of the other few things just to check on. Sometimes they skip some things. Like once in a while, you'll get somebody that accidentally skips the chromatic scale, or somebody who accidentally, they just accidentally miss one of the submissions. Then you get stuck because you can't again. And again, that's why I said, if I have any advice for anyone, Allstate is be a part of the process for your students and yourself, and be your best advocate. Make a checklist of all. You're right. Make a checklist of all those things. I'm always the guy that reads it and then has like 5,000 questions because I've read it, but comprehension seems to go out the window sometimes. So I just always want to make sure, like, up here in Washington last year, we had a postmark deadline, and I was just freaking out about, okay, I'm going to hand deliver that postmark so that it gets the right postmark date. I even got to the UPS guy. This is getting postmarked today. Correct. And then I sent a picture and an email to my leaders because I was so panicked about missing any part of that process. But let's go a little bit further now on the education role. How long is this the only positions, Allstate, that you've ever served? Have you ever served in any other positions as a
with state organizations, no, but with universities hosting a lot of student teachers and interns, I think I've had probably 13, 14 of those now for my time. I've got another one coming in this next semester.
Because I think the culture of being a leader, even, just getting into the community, how important is it to yourself that you're a part of the community? Because, I always say this, you're getting these super high paychecks to get all these things done. Right. So you're obviously doing it for the money. Right. And so like clearly for the money, but, giving of yourself, because I think every time I've ever volunteered or been a part of it, I get more out of it than people realize. And I think that's kind of the catch is, not only do I get I get some professional development out of it by doing it, but I learn from the process. I learn how to make myself a better teacher. I learn how to make the students better. What are your thoughts on being telling teachers what opportunities are out there, and why is it important for us to serve?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. You know, I see a lot of it's kind of a mix. You get the people that have been teaching for a while, doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I've seen some young teachers get in there too, which is awesome. And I think it's important that we have people, regardless of your experience level, helping out. Just because you're a second year teacher and you don't have enough gray hairs yet doesn't mean that you can't be helping in some sort of capacity. Maybe you don't have enough experience yet to organize or, be a VP of a certain area. But you could be a member at large. There's so many other things that you can do to be helping out in your organizations and contributing to the state. And yeah, you certainly learn so much. Just for me personally, seeing the roster and seeing wow, this school's got like 90 kids showing up every single year. That's amazing. And what are those directors doing that's, making that happen? Or, the ones that are getting a ton of kids in, you start asking questions and asking their philosophies and what are they doing in their classroom that's maybe different than your own. Building connections, meeting new people that I would have normally not met. Most of my people are kind of East Valley area folks that are my, personal friends. But I've been able to meet a lot more people from across the state now because of this and work with them and, build those connections. Corey Walovich was a co-chair with me for a while. He's down in Tucson. Ruben Miranda was the one that brought me on board initially. He was in Deer Valley then and now is up in Northern California. So it's really cool to just be able to, it's like with anything in music, be able to network and reach out and meet some new people, learn some new things.
All right. Well, let's make the shift to your teaching and schools. And, and thank you for sharing. I mean, I wanted to talk about that culture. I think it's important that we encourage teachers to not only serve, but also on the all-state end, get involved a little more in the process. Like I said, a lot of times we could help our students simply just by listening and just being there a little bit more. But let's talk about your program. So talk about some of your recent successes. Like I know Patrick had put up a picture of your band up there, and you said before we get ready for the show, oh, that's a picture of my band who you just gotten out of festival. So talk about your band program a little bit.
Yeah. So we had a picture of us that's kind of at our entry door to our building there, and that was coming off of a state festival this past May. They had just earned that ensemble as my top band, my wind ensemble. They just earned their 14th consecutive superior with distinction rating at festival, which was, it's huge deal. It takes a lot of work in our foundation skills in class and programming and all that. So I was really proud of them for, stepping up and their contribution to our history with our school and traditional of excellence and wanting to do well. And then there was another photo of my elementary band, and man, that's some of the more fun things I do too. Like all of us come into college. It was funny. I was talking with one time, Marg Schmidt at ASU was one of our professors there. And I asked her this sometime after I graduated. I said, Marg, how many people come in, freshmen there, and they all say, I want to teach high school band or I want to teach high school orchestra. And before I'd even finished my sentence, she was saying, all of them, all of you guys come to college and you all say you want to teach high school, and everybody, and I was for sure doing the same thing. And I thought junior high kids were just the most vile humans and creatures on the planet. And there was no way I wanted to teach them. But I was in college, I was working, one of my jobs was working at a before and after school program. And I all of a sudden came to realize that the junior high kids were the ones that were my most favorite, which is why I started to push myself into the junior high track. But really the elementary stuff too is just so intriguing. Laying that foundation and getting them to learn and grow is just, it is a very challenging process. I think teaching that first quarter of elementary band is harder than teaching a grade 5.
I will agree with you.
Not that I'm doing grade 5s with my junior high band, but
what? Well, come on. I'm kidding. But But like I say, I don't like to. I mean, I do like to focus on. I love to observe band programs that get consistent ratings from year to year because it's something that you do, you figure out, or something that you've done with the culture of your students and your kids, and it must be amazing to have elementary all the way. You got that consistency of knowing where the kids are when they get there, and how many schools feed into your junior high.
So we have 3 that are dedicated coming just to our school, and then there's like 3 or 4 others that are bits and pieces.
And how big is your? I would tell people how big is your junior high?
Our junior high this year, I think the number I heard the other day from the secretary was 880. We're a little smaller this year. Usually we're in the 900s.
Yeah, a little smaller. That's 2 grades, so that's 400 and something kids per grade.
Yes.
And like I said, that's pretty big because people don't know Mesa schools. Mesa is a big city. Mesa's over 500,000 people, and it's only 5 high schools, 6. I lost track of the number of high schools, but
We're 6 high schools and then 12 junior highs. We got a couple focus junior highs that are like different models than the traditional model, and then elementaries. Gosh, I want to say we're like in the 80s. It's a huge.
yeah.
It's the biggest district in Arizona, and
Oh
one
yeah,
of the
it's
biggest in
just
the U.S.
I just remember the high schools were like some of them at one point. There's a couple that were approaching 4,000 students in the student body, and it's just amazing how big some of those schools get. But for you, it's about the high expectations that you have for your kids because I know for a fact bands play well for many reasons, but the teacher in the classroom drives those expectations. So setting high expectations with an uplifting environment drives student growth. What specific practices help your students feel supported while aiming for high standards?
It's really giving them that safety net of, developing their technique. We would love to think that our students go home and if they're practicing, they're definitely starting with 20 minutes of foundations. And yeah, that's not, we hope. We can hope and pray all we want. It doesn't always happen. So, for a lot of those kids, even if they are practicing, they might just be going home and jumping into their rep because that's what they find fun, engaging. So it's really important that we are laying that foundation with them every single day and helping, kind of nitpick on the things that could be better. When we're doing our Remingtons and we got that 4-beat rest in between, there is always some sort of shout out and giving in between, whether it's watch your releases, balance, focused air, whatever it is that I'm hearing to help make sure that they're, honing in on their skills, or, percussion are back there working on different rudiments back there on pads, vertical alignment on your rhythms. There's never a moment of like running through things. It's not a warm up. It is a fundamental study. And I think that's one thing that constantly gets overlooked is people might say, well, we're doing our scales and we're doing our long tones, but are you actually working them and refining them? Because when they can do those things and they're ingrained in it to just do it, and they don't, they have an idea in their heads, whether they realize it or not, of what a balanced sound is supposed to feel like and sound like, it's going to translate to their rep, and you're not going to have to fix those things so much.
And how long is your warm up? I just like to know these things. These are my questions to the audience, but how long does your warm up process take? Like, what's a general amount of, I know it's not the same every single day, but what's a general warm up process for you take in your classroom?
Yeah. So the beginning of a rehearsal cycle is definitely going to be heavier. And then as we, get closer to the concert, things tend to shift.
You're right.
It's going to be about 40% of our rehearsal, and maybe even
That's
as much as
amazing.
50% at the beginning. And then, as we go through, and even as the year develops, that the top band at the end of the year doesn't have many more things to add into it because this is, we're kind of at the end of the road. But still there's within the cycle, there's going to be a bit of a shift, and we're making sure that we're laying the foundation for, there might be some specific things like, okay, my trumpets are playing a lot more at the top of the staff. So we're going to be working a lot more things to make sure they're not playing so flat and that they're really, centering in on pitch. Or the clarinets have got a lot of pinky action coming up in this, or maybe it's even I know I want to do this piece at the end of the year. I remember a few years ago, there was that like grade 3-ish arrangement of the Mandalorian, but it's in D flat.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
we were working D flat a lot from the beginning of the year. And thirds and technical exercise and all that to make sure that when I passed it out, they didn't look at the key signature and just shut down.
Yeah. How important are those key centers for you, for your bands?
Oh, 100% important. My goal with my bands is, our main four F through A flat concert.
Right.
By the time they leave me, they can play all those technical exercises that we have in our district warm-up packet at 120. The lower bands, we're working more F, B flat, E flat. And then we are getting to C and D flat just because even if we're not playing in those key signatures very often, we're using, the accidentals that might come along from as a result of those keys. The technical exercises in those ones, it depends on the band, depends on the year. But yeah,
Junior high is a
it's
little bit
super
different than
important.
high school. For me, for high school, it's like I have the three key centers per quarter, so to speak, and then I kind of keep following the same pattern. And it only gets altered by the rep. So if the if the rep goes its on a way, then we're going to do those keys sooner. But a lot of times it starts with my easier keys. But it's trying to get those 12 scales in those kids. I just believe every high school kid can get all of those. I learned it from my 6th grade band when I was growing up. Our teacher tricked us. She said you could play in the middle school band. Again, it was the 70s. You could play in the middle school band if you learned all 12 scales. So that was her trickery to get all of us to pass off 12 scales in 6th grade. And everybody did it because that was the way we all wanted to be in junior high band. And that's kind of like the process that kind of tricked me. Like, hey, this technique's important. And then I always remember when I started teaching that, hey, if we did it in 6th grade, probably everybody can do this. You just got to set some of those expectations. But let's go back to this culture before content. So we're talking about the content, but I always like to go backwards. The way that you teach that content definitely has to come from the culture of how you teach and those expectations. Like, what does your classroom, what does your classroom feel like? How are the kids for you? How do you create that culture to be teaching some of these advanced concepts?
Sometimes it's just tapping into like, what are the students wanting to work on? I had a student the other day that she was like, well, our parents really like it when we play music that they recognize because we had just finished our concert and that group had done an arrangement of Avengers. And I was like, well, to be able to do that, we have to be able to do all these things. We can't just all of a sudden decide we're going to play, music from Nightmare Before Christmas when you don't know how to play anything that has an accidental in it. And so, it taps into the things that they want to do. And like, okay, well, we can do that, but this is what we need to be able to, these are the skills that we need to be able to do these things.
So I think it's more, this is like these amazing conversations. I think it has to do with kind of like how we are as teachers when we walk in the classroom, like our energy, whatever our energy is like. And, I hate to tell the kids, but my energy is not as it appears sometimes. Sometimes we have to like just, get it within us, but that can, how you approach the classroom, talk to the classroom, engage them from the beginning, and totally influence and create some of that enthusiasm. How does an educator's energy affect student motivation performance, in your opinion?
Oh yeah, no, that's really huge too. I mean, if you come in and you're just like unengaged, you're going to see the exact same thing in your students. I've always trying to been a big proponent with, especially when I'm hosting student teachers and interns, get off the podium, get out there and wander the room. And you can be giving those little pats on the back or like, hey, I like that. Can you fix this or help, getting out there or before class, chatting with your students and how was that football game that you were in the other day? Or, just trying to develop those little moments with your students. It can be difficult because I also feel like those are the moments in before and after class. My head joint's stuck or I can't get my mouthpiece out or whatever it is. But the more you can be, not hiding in your office and greeting them out the door and saying hello or, talking to them in the hallways when you see them, those little moments can turn into some pretty big things.
Are there any special things that you do that maybe is unique, or maybe something that you borrowed or something? What's unique about you for your students? What is some things that makes Christina Soper so cool to her kids?
um, I'll try to add in some things that are fun. One of the pictures that I tried sending to you guys that didn't want to come through was
Aw.
one of the kids' favorite days of the year, and it doesn't even involve playing instruments, which drives me a little bit crazy, but then they also love it. So I guess whatever, is our lock tournament. And a few years ago, I was like, these kids don't remember their locker combinations. And I was getting so frustrated. And so rather than getting, frustrated and then letting that come out in my teaching at them, I we did a lock tournament. And so the first day we're learning how to open lockers, and with 7th grade, that is an entire lesson that it takes them a while. Some of them just the lefts and the rights, they don't they don't know. So we practice rounds in our chair, and then we get in a circle and we partner them up, and then they have to spin, and then I'll say shoot, and then they gotta get their combination in as fast as they can. And we, whittle it down, and it comes down to like the final couple, and then we have the winners, and they love it. It's like a bunch of kids will say it's their favorite day of band is the lock tournament day at the beginning of the year. So it's kind of funny, but you know what? They do not forget their combinations after that first day. Cause before, man, it was like the next day was like, okay, now we're spending a whole nother half of a period trying to get through doing looking up their combinations again. So it took a situation that was frustrating, and we made a game. And so, things like that, what can we do to help, and it could be something more simple. We're working on right now in my middle band, my symphonic band. We're playing Christmas in Scarborough by Tyler Arcari. And some of them know that melody, they're like raised on classic rock. They know the Simon and Garfunkel recording, and other kids have never heard that melody before. And I was really impressed when I played in the piece that a lot of the kids liked it. A lot of the classic rock kids were picking up on the melody and they loved it. So designing that melody sheet to go over in class really quick to make sure that they're holding that dotted half note so that the beat one rest doesn't come in early and all that. It could have turned into this wood shedding, miserable experience where you're trying to get everybody, learning the trumpet section to get their melody or whoever it is. And just something as simple as that can really change the demeanor of your classroom. So I would say, yeah, anything that's frustrating you, analyze it, and what can you do to make that situation better without having to, get so down in the dredges about all of it.
So why do you think culture is essential for making your classroom go?
Culture builds trust. Both culture with your parents, culture with your students. Your students need to be able to fall and stumble in the classroom and maybe laugh off their little bumps and bruises and squeaks and squawks along the way and know how to recover. And, same thing with the parents. The parents need to know that you've got their kids back. You're taking care of their children. And, having kids of my own definitely, made me think about things just a little bit differently. I definitely became a better teacher, a new perspective when I had kids of my own. And building that trust within the parents that you're organized and you've got everything set for them, because I think that's a huge way to buy trust in your families with the parent community, is that, they know what to expect and there are no surprises, and that they know they're going to get clear communication with you is huge.
Do you have any special communication thing? Like, I always like to find out what everyone's, do you have an app or a service or something that you use, or is it email? How do you communicate with your larger community?
Mainly mine's just email. We do have Canvas as the district. I found that people tend to not like it because when they get a message from Canvas, it comes with, the subject line is all garbled and there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's a little difficult to read. We are launching right now. There's about a dozen schools in my district that are launching Parent Square. So we've only had it for a couple weeks, so I'm not super familiar with it just yet. I'm excited to see how it.
I'm going to give you my little impression of Parent Square, because I find it phenomenal. As I was telling you earlier, and to my audience, I got back from my final football games. I know you're sad. My season is over. We got back at right about 1:51 a.m. because we had to drive 3.5 hours. And of course, it's a football game. So we had to drive the 3.5 hours back. But we have Parent Square. And if people don't out there, it's kind of one of those things your district will provide you. It's not something you're really going to buy. But when you get it, the neat thing is it automatically connects you to parents and students. So like I just took whoever went on that trip and I could talk to all the parents and students. So the neat thing on that one is I just kept sending updates on the football game. I kept sending updates on what time the bus was going to arrive. And it's really unique. It's one of those things that I have found, and the more and more I've used, I've had it for 4 years now. The more and more I've used it, the better I'm getting the parents to get those necessary communications. I don't depend on it as to be like the only way, but like for just getting home on it, we're going to be back at 2:00, please pick up your kid. It's fantastic. I think we got the bus back and everyone was gone within 10 minutes of arrival. And mainly because, and the parents could appreciate the post so that, that people are reading it, and, and you can actually send it to the kids and the parents, or just the kids or just the parents. Apparently for my kids, just FYI, on a school bus, it's for please turn the heat up and please turn the heat down. Very, very popular Parent Square, but it is very unique. And I do understand the Canvas thing. Those are, I always say, that's kind of like your teaching place. And, parents don't want to go to the teaching place. Parents want to go to a communication place. And so at least Parent Square bought Remind, by the way. And so I'm hoping that many of the Remind features, I'm hoping that the Remind, because I used to use Remind, but then we don't have that contract anymore. So now it's Parent Square. It works. But I just think that communication. Oh, look, Brendan and Dana Wilson. Oh yeah, that's one of my parents. Well, we love Parent Square. I love it. But I just think that communication is key, as I was telling people, that if you don't get communication from your parents because you're communicating so much, that's almost a sign of success, because we don't have questions. And then when they do have a question, they feel super, super excited to actually ask you some of those questions. Any other cultural things in your program? I mean, that you hit that right on the head: trust, communication. What are some of the things that define you've been successful for so long? And that's probably some of those things that now it's just so patterned for some of you. Like you probably don't even think about it from those terms anymore, because your expectations are so high for your students, and it shows in the way that your bands play. Are there any other final expectations we can think of for teachers?
I think one thing that we need to be better about, and I was definitely guilty about this in my early years, is bringing people into our room. Everybody's so worried about, bringing people into their messy house, so to speak. And, I only want to bring somebody in when I'm comfortable. Yeah, right. I'm conveniently showing a clean portion of mine as we're ending marching season with my daughter. And I wish I would have brought people in earlier and sooner, and not been so worried about, obviously bring in people that you trust and are going to give you the honesty you need, but, kindly.
Right.
I was when I came to Stapley, I was having our high school director that I feed into, Scott Bergener, who's obviously super amazing. And he was just so huge in helping me develop things and change things at the beginning. And, I'd been doing elementary for those 2 years and felt pretty solid about things. And junior high is obviously just a whole nother ball game. And he was just, he would point out the things and like, I'm sure you're hearing this. And I know he was like, I know you're hearing it. I was like, man, I totally was not hearing that. Dang it. He was super, super kind. And I just really appreciated his patience and his dedication to helping breed the culture in my program, because he always had such an amazing culture in his, and, helping build my confidence and my skill level. And so I would encourage, teachers to bring that into your classroom, and, bring in those other perspectives and those different personalities. You learn something every time, not just musically, but, how they approach things and how they interact with students and things like that. I think you get more out of it than you would expect.
I will say this: I can hear my band, if I get away from it, much better than I can by teaching it. And that, my favorite days are when a clinician comes in, And my other favorite day is when I get in the auditorium and I can go sit in the auditorium, and all that work that I've done on what I think is fantastic. Sometimes it's not so fantastic, but the neat thing is experience teaches you that you can fix some of these things, but you've got to put those things in there. And so, like, I say, I always volunteer. If anybody wants me to come listen, I will come listen. The neat thing about being a former administrator and yeah, Scott Berger, is that I got to used to go into classrooms, and I could fill out, I could just write things down on a sheet and hand it to somebody and go here. And I think people are more receptive than we realize. But I think, yeah, when you're young, you're so afraid. It's kind of like, I don't know. I was talking to somebody about teaching kindergarten the other day. And kindergarten to me is like herding cats. Only the cats are wild and they're rabid. And you can't find any of them and they're gone. And so kindergarten is a special breed of teacher, but it is okay to think that chaos becomes order, but it's not going to become order unless you find a way to attack some of those things. And having somebody come into the room, great. I said, the older I get, the less I know. And so when somebody comes in the room and they say something, and then just like you, I'm like, yeah, I did not hear that. That is interesting. Or like David Coons, one of our former guests, if you ever have him, he'll come out or he'll come online. When he listens to your band, A, you're super scared, but B, as soon as you're done, you're like, that man is 100% right all the time. And I learned so much from all that. And so I will do this. I'm going to send you a recording of my band during the course of this year. And you give me some feedback, and feel free to do the same. Because I think that's kind of like the share that all of us do is I like to record my bands a lot and see how much I can get out of them from week to week and see if we can push. But you spoke that you were going to, you've had student teachers before, did you say?
Oh yeah. Yeah. About 13 or 14 now.
Have you really had that many?
Yeah. Between that, student teachers and interns. Yeah. Some NAU, some Ottawa, and ASU.
Let's talk about that for a second. Okay.
Yeah.
So, because I think that I also think that's a great way to get a way to hear your band different, putting them in the hands of the I shouldn't call them kids because they are totally adults. But having a student teacher, I think, is one of the biggest gifts that we can give back to the profession. Yeah, we can't make them better teachers, but we can kind of provide that thing. What have you noticed about your student teachers or your culture of your student teachers?
What's really cool about having student teachers is, once upon a time I used to be like young, hip, and cool to my students, and now I'm in my 40s, and I'm like, picking rep is harder. Like, not only because I'm more picky with what I pick, but then the things that I think that they're gonna identify with, they like don't. It just throws me for a loop. We do a lot more listening nowadays, but it's fun having student teachers because they're more at their age level, so they like get them more, and you kind of get more of a idea of what it's like to identify with those kids and try to play off of it a little bit more. Cause I feel like even with, teenager preteens in my house, I don't know anymore, I guess. And, obviously having student teacher, you just learn so much from them too. Professors that they have now, even at ASU, that it's not all the same faculty that I had. And, they're learning the tricks that they've learned and, new techniques. It's just like bringing a clinician into your room. You're learning all sorts of new things. Or, the next one I have coming in, she marched trumpet in Blue Devil. So I'm like, I suck at trumpet. I'm pretty good at teaching trumpet now, but I'm like, I'm really looking forward to some, more trumpet tips. Or I had a really great student teacher a couple of years ago that was two of them back to back that were both jazz players. And so it was great to have, I'm obviously a classical flute player, so my jazz chops are not going to be the same as theirs are. And they're both like, pretty jazz focused in their high school and junior high years. So it's, it's so fun just learning from these younger musicians and, spitting ideas off of each other. And
well, the other thing that student teachers come with is you do get a professor in your room to come listen to your band. I know they're not there to listen to your band, but that feeling of that, if you're like me, those music ed professors are kind of intimidating because those are the people that taught us or the people that we respect in our community, and just bringing that. But I think amazing thing about student teachers is they're just learning I mean, that's one of those things I want to know is like, what cultural questions do they have? Because sometimes they're just trying to create the culture that you have or recreate it or listen and imitate. So, let's talk about the young teachers now. So like, so you've had these student teachers. What advice would you give to young teachers about walking into the classroom? And also put your experience of being elementary school in there as well. What's the biggest
Yeah.
advice you have about setting up both either middle school or a junior high classroom for a teacher out there?
You know, really knowing your secondary instruments is huge, and being able to sit down and play an instrument a week or whatever it is and focus on it and really hone in on those skills, because this is your last opportunity to really be able to do that all the time without having to manage the entire ship yourself. Just take advantage of that, and always, whether it's in student teaching or in your own teaching, sometimes you don't know the answer to something. And even now I'll run into, once in a while, I'll just tell the kids, you know what? I don't know how to fix this today. I'm going to go home and I'm going to go text some friends, email some people, put a message on a Facebook forum, and, reach out and figure out what is it that I need to know to make this better. Cause all the tips that I have so far are not working. And being able to admit that in front of your students, regardless of your experience level, is huge. You don't need to know it all the time. You just need to know how to figure it out and find the resources to figure it out. And that's a huge lesson for all of our students to see.
So let's think about this for just a second, because I'll probably shock you with this next statement. We've kind of run out of time. And so I want to think, it goes so fast. I have like
I
500
know.
other questions. So we could do final thoughts on your choice. We can do it on final thoughts about being a teacher, final thoughts on your classroom, final thoughts on Allstate, final thoughts. But, culture before content, the reason this podcast had become important to me, because I really do believe everything I do doesn't have its reason until I have an organization to that reason. And again, for me, that culture, even at school, I think, what am I going to have tomorrow? Well, I guess not tomorrow. I hope everyone's on a 3-day weekend. What am I going to have Tuesday? What's the culture? Because that's what has become so important to me, setting up my kids, thinking about just that topic, culture before content. Give us your final thoughts to the world.
Kind of bouncing off of that last question with the student teachers, is learning can't, and this would be for anybody, learning can't exist in chaos. And you need to have some sort of thought about what's going on in your room, whether it is the nuts and bolts of what am I teaching in this lesson today, or, what do I want my kids to get out of this experience in general, not even just the music, but what life skills are they getting out of it? You've got to have everything organized so that you can function. I know when my classroom starts to fall apart and things are a little bit messy, my brain is just spinning all over the place. And so, I always tell my student teachers, and I would say this to anybody that's a young teacher, anybody that's going into a new position, I think your number one priority to be able to get things to be successful is to give your brain that ability to, that space to be able to think and to breathe. And if you don't know where to find things, and you don't know what's in your inventory, and your music library is a mess, how can you function in all of that? And so getting things in order as much as you possibly can, so that you can provide the best experience and space for your students, is huge.
That's great. That was just great. You have one of those lovely emails. I'm going to try to do my best to describe to our listeners out there. Okay. So it is, here we go. CMJARAMILLOSOPE. CM Jaramillo Sope. I can't even know how to say that. But when
so they ran out of characters, so the R is not on Soper.
So,
and it has my maiden name because I hyphenated. So CM Jaramillo Sope at mpsaz.org.
Yeah. So if you're watching, you've got it right there. If you're listening, CMJARAMILLOSOPE@mpsaz.org. That's a lot of letters. Anyway, if anybody has any questions, I always encourage anyone to email our guest and ask for advice, ask for just say hello. Because we are such a giving community, and that's partly why I love having you all on the show, because you make us all better. You make me better. And I cannot thank you enough for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks again. All righty, folks. We're already done with another episode. It feels like it goes for 5 minutes before I have to end. So thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Culture Before Content on the Music for All podcast network. You can always email me at david.duarte@me.com. That's david.duarte@me.com. And again, thanks Yamaha for being our national presenting sponsor, and to Music for All for making this podcast possible. And as always, thank you to my amazing staff for making me look good. And again, you can find these podcasts on musicforall.org/podcast. You can watch the video versions on Facebook and YouTube, or you can get the audio versions on Apple Podcast and Spotify or wherever. And before you go, just don't forget to share this episode on your socials or tell a friend. Come back next week and help spread the word. Well, I hope to see you all next week. And thanks again for attending another great episode of Culture Before Content.
Thank you.